Hi, I'm Jennifer Ashley Tepper.
And I'm Joe Iconis. And you're listening to the Album Podcast on the Broadway Podcast Network.
This episode is about the song Tightrope Walker, Mountain Climber, Me. And if you couldn't hear it, there were slashes in between each of those three phrases. A song that is one of two that was specifically written by Joe for the album.
Tightrope Walker, Mountain Climber, Me actually started its life over 10 years ago at the Beechman Theater on West 42nd Street. And I wrote it in a very early version, performed it, and then put it away in a drawer and picked it up again many years later for the album. And this episode goes into the very detailed history of the song and why it took 12 years to actually write it.
With great performance notes on the immense work of Molly Hager, and also some shout outs to some of the amazing band work on this track. Enjoy this episode. All exploding on the floor. The next song we're going to be talking about is Tightrope Walker, Mountain Climber, Me, which is a song that was written explicitly for the album, correct?
It sure was.
And how many songs were written explicitly for the album?
That would be two
So
songs.
very special.
A duo of songs. I wrote for this album, the song album, the title track, and Tightrope Walker, Mountain Climber, Me.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to have two specific songs that were written, or like how did this song come about?
My goal when I first decided I was going to do this album was to not write any new songs because I had so many that already existed. It was just like, I don't need to, like, number one is like, I don't want to put the pressure on myself to have to write anything new, because it was during the pandemic and I was feeling not terribly inspired. And then also it was just like, just worry about recording the songs you already have, man, because you have so many of them, like, write new stuff for the next project. But I just couldn't help myself. And so it was really album. The title track was the one that I set out to write. And then Tightrope Walker, I really wrote for Molly Hager because I knew I wanted to give her something, and there just wasn't a song that existed that made it very much sense to have her do. And she was already doing Teenage Delinquent with Lauren Marcus, this duet, but it's like I wanted to give her one more thing. And Molly Hager is such an incredible singer. On record, she just, nobody sounds like her. And I really wanted to like give her something that felt like it was honoring her vocal talents. And previously she'd sung Broadway Here I Come, which is on the Jamboree album. And Broadway Here I Come is like this, a ballad. It's like a ballad. And so I just was like, I would love to get Hager singing something that felt a little bit more buoyant and like persnickety or something. And so I was wondering if there was any song that I had that I just wasn't thinking of. And then I went back to this song that I had tried to write for years, that I actually premiered in a very early version at a Beechman concert in 2012. And the song was essentially the same setup as Tightrope Walker, Mountain Climber, Me, and it had the same first verse, I think. The tightrope walker, don't you fall down now, and so the song in 2012, it was the same idea where the first part was about this tightrope walker, the second part was about this mountain climber, and it was about these feats that people do, and then the third part became very internal. And so when I first did it, the third part was about me trying to write a song that would be an opening song for my concert at the Beechman, and it was one of those tunes where it was like it kind of was okay, but there was something about it that just didn't work. It felt unfinished. And so because of that, I kind of put it away, and I never really got it back out to work on it. And after a number of years, I kind of chalked it up to like, okay, this Tightrope Walker song, it was a cool idea. and the execution of it just didn't really work, and maybe one day I'll be able to return to it. And so, then now we're in like, 2021, and I'm thinking about Molly Hager, and I just sort of had a flash of this song, and I was like, oh, that Tightrope Walker song. I wonder if there's anything there. And so I, went on the excavation of like trying to find the lyrics that I performed that night at the Beachman, and I found a like a crude recording that I had done of the song, and you know, coming back to the song 10 years later, or almost 10 years later, I felt like my perspective on myself and the business and the world made me think about the content of the song in a totally different way. And I just rewrote it, and it really really felt, as much as Mothers Are Special felt to me like a collaboration between my like 30-year-old self and my 6-year-old self. Tightrope Walker, Mountain Climber Me felt to me like a collaboration between my 41-year-old self and my 31-year-old self.
Mhm.
um
I can't
yeah.
wait till you employ this to talk about some revival of your work in 20 years, and you're like, "My 60-year-old self collaborated with my 25-year-old self."
Yeah, it's gonna be so good. It's gonna love it. They're gonna love it. Um, yeah, and so it's the more I sort of like got into writing the song, it was one of the songs where when I started rewriting it, I didn't know where I was going. And I kept sort of like writing myself into a hole where I loved the idea of each verse would be about this different person trying to attempt something that felt superhuman, and then the third verse was going to be about, the artist, the person, singing it. But I just couldn't fully get how they connected or what the payoff was. And then when I kind of stumbled onto this idea of like, oh, it's actually the whole song is just the artist, and they're just watching YouTube videos. They're just watching
Mhm.
YouTube videos of a tightrope walker and a mountain climber and all these other people, and they're doing that instead of participating in their own life and accomplishing things of their own for, a number of reasons. That was like, oh, that's what this song is. And that kind of opened everything up for me. And then the song sort of became about something that was different than I thought it was going to be. I thought
Mhm.
that I was writing a song that was sort of using tightrope walking and mountain climbing as a metaphor for an artist trying to make a life in the arts. And then I ended up, still writing about how hard it is to be an artist trying to make a life in the arts, but in a slightly different way and through a different lens.
When did you finish writing this song? Like, it wasn't when was it recorded in the process of making the album, and when did you finish writing it?
It was kind of late. I wrote it predominantly in Garden City at my family's house, because I started around the holidays. I feel like around like late 2020, early 2021, and then it was something that it was like kind of half finished, hanging over my head for a while. And we started recording, and I knew that like, oh, I have to finish this song so we can record it with the band. I couldn't finish it by the time we had the band recording days. And so then I was just like, I'm just going to finish this in my own time, and then we'll worry about recording it when we do. And so this is one of the only ones where we recorded the piano first after we did all the band sessions, because I missed the band sessions because it was a new song. So we did piano first. Then we had Hager come in to do the vocals over just the piano. And then we added all the other instruments. And because it was recorded that way, it has a slightly different tone to it, I think, than some of the other tunes, in a way that feels really appropriate for what the song is. And because we didn't have, years of live performances as a touchstone for what the sound should be and what the orchestration should be, this felt the most like, if I was like a singer-songwriter, experimenting in a studio, because there is no like institutional knowledge of like, oh, this is how the song was originally created and what it, has typically sounded like. So we sort of had to make it up on the spot and let the song and really Molly's vocal kind of dictate the other instruments and the sound. And that's, I think, why it's kind of so specific. And Gerard Canonico played drums on it, and Dennis Michael Keefe did stand up bass on it, and Ian Keggy is playing a guitar. That's all Ian Keggy, and everyone always thinks that that's a synth, but it's actually a guitar. And then I did some additional synth, and yeah, I think the song, like, it has this sounds that feels both like technologically inspired and really analog. It feels like it's both like a throwback and really contemporary, which feels appropriate to me for the content of the song itself.
Hmm. Because Molly has performed like Sheila and Nail a few times, did you see this at all as like connected in some ways to that song? Because I feel like there are certain thematic, like, parallels almost.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, it's funny, like I haven't really made the Shill and Nail connection uh to this song, but I should, because it's there. I mean, certainly, structurally, uh it's certainly similar. I feel like I definitely went through, like, I go through periods where I really get obsessed with songs that are like told in threes or three
Hmm.
parts.
Hmm.
And there's definitely a few on the album, like something like Try Again is like, that's a three-part thing where it's like each verse has its kind of own subject. They're like little sort of triple features. Uh, but
Hmm.
but yeah, this
Yeah, I feel
one
like quite a few are
for
three
sure.
parts. Yeah.
I just really love that structure, and I think that a song really organically fits into that kind of, three. It's not really a three-act structure, because it's like sort of different characters. It's like sort of breaking down the song and seeing the verse and the chorus as like completely, different but connected stories. So it's
Hmm.
like, in this thing, if album itself is this like collection of, short stories set to music, I feel like some of the songs, like Tightrope Walker, Mountain Climber Me, are like a collection of short stories in and of themselves. That all, when you put them together, they create this larger story.
Hey, look, a gift of Emma Stone. Hey, look, a think piece.
Hey, thanks so much for listening or watching to my podcast. Do me a favor and go to wherever you just listen to or watch this thing and subscribe or like or give us a great rating or review, and then head to bpn.fm/album to find out even more information about this podcast, more ways to watch, more ways to listen, and check out my album. Thanks so much for hanging out.
Album Podcast is executive produced by Liz Armstrong, produced by Dori Berenstein, Alan Seals, Kim Garris, and the rest of the team at the Broadway Podcast Network. Be sure to visit bpn.fm/album for both audio and video versions of this podcast, and to listen to Album.